Hey Bears fans, what is up? Welcome to the Chicago Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on our Chicago Bears. Look, we're going to talk D. We're going to talk Dennis Allen. We're going to talk Chicago Bears defense. We're going to talk edge rusher. We're going to talk those positions of need. Look, we've talked ad infinitum, about the running back position. We've talked Nick Chubb. We've talked J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. We've talked DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai. But another position that is a position of need is the edge rusher position for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, we have Montez Sweat. We have Dayo Odeyingbo. My pronunciation's getting better. We've also got Austin Booker as well, who's likely to feature there. Has an opportunity to really kind of sort of factor himself into the rotation out there. But there is still a need to go out and get someone to add some depth to that position. Now, there's been loads of talk, hasn't there, about possible trades for the likes of Trey Hendrickson, for example. However, I mean, as I said on my previous video, Trey Hendrickson's 31. I don't think that's the direction the Bears are going in at this moment in time. I think it's too high a price to pay for someone of that age, especially as this team, I don't think, are in that position of win now in terms of contending to win a Super Bowl. I think, were you in the position to kind of be ready to win a Super Bowl, then perhaps the Trey Hendrickson trade and then obviously bringing in someone like a Nick Chubb would be the perfect things to do to finish the roster and win that Super Bowl. But I still don't think that this roster is ready yet to compete for a Super Bowl, despite the fact it is a million times better than last season. The coaching staff is a million times better than last season as well. I certainly think that this roster will end up with a winning season this season with 10 or 11 wins. I certainly think we will get to the playoffs, and I certainly think we'll win at least one playoff game. However, Dennis Allen, I think, is someone who has come to the franchise and has really brought not only his outstanding defensive coordinator knowledge to the franchise, but has also brought kind of veteran coach kind of mentory kind of overseeing of Ben Johnson to some degree. I'm sure that Ben will be able to turn to Dennis Allen, who's had two spells as a head coach at New Orleans and with the Raiders. Yes, not overly successful, perhaps why he's back to being a defensive coordinator. But DA's defenses are well renowned for their aggression, for their speed, for their inventiveness. And I think a lot of people have talked, haven't they, about the Bears offense being inventive, been original, been thinking outside the box. But I think we'll see the same from the defense this year. You've only got to go back to the defense of the New Orleans Saints under Dennis Allen to see how good the guy is as a DC. DA is the top DC. Now, like I said, one position that we've talked about as needing further strengthening is that edge position. Obviously extra players need to be brought in. Now, as I've said, I don't think the Bears are going to go big at that position. Not only for the fact that, like I said, with Trey Hendrickson, I don't think we're in a position to win the Super Bowl now and contend now. And I think the price would be far too high to pay, plus the salary, etc., etc. I do think, however, they will look to bring depth in. Obviously, as well, you've got to look at the cap space. Yes, cap space can be cleared, through restructuring of contracts, but I certainly don't think it's enough to bring in someone like Trey Hendrickson, who's going to want big money to come and play. I think they could add some depth, and one of the hidden gems of free agency who still has not been picked up yet by any of the organizations, which has been reported by a number of media sources in the States, is Tanoa Campasagnon. I think that's I shit with names. I'm really bad with names. But yeah, Tanoa, K-P-A-S-S-A-G-N-O-N. Campasagnon, something like that anyway. Tanoa Passagno. There you go. Passagno. That's apparently how you say it. That's according to Wikipedia. Passagno. So Tanoa Passagno. He is an edge rusher, currently a free agent. Was previously with the New Orleans Saints. And yes, that is right. He did play under DA, so has had experience of playing for Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen knows him. He knows Dennis Allen. He is 30 years old, so he is, someone who I think is going to be a depth piece. He certainly has never really reached the heights or been an outstanding edge rusher one. But I think we've got to kind of put our faith in Montez Sweat and Dayo Odeyingbo going into this season. I mean, Dayo is got to prove himself. This is a guy who next season is going to be due over 20 mil, and if he wants to justify that and remain with the Bears, he's going to have a big season. So he's going to have to get back to not obviously the form of last season when he was exceptionally poor, but of the 8 sack seasons he's had in the past. But Passagno is certainly someone who, I think could well come into reckoning. Like I said, he's 30 years old. He's 6'7". He's 289 pounds. He is from Kalamazoo, Michigan. What a name for a place, Kalamazoo. I'd love to come there and live there. In 2017, he was drafted in the second round with the 59th pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. He's played for 2 NFL franchises in the Chiefs and the Saints. He is a former Super Bowl champion. He won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs in their 31-20 win over the San Francisco 49ers. He's also been a 2-time first All-CAA when he was in college, and a CAA Defensive Player of the Year as well. The one thing that kind of goes against Passagno is he's coming off the back of a torn Achilles. He missed most of last season, and injuries have held him back to some degree. However, when he has been fit, when he has been coached by Dennis Allen, he's shown some flashes of brilliance, certainly enough to, I think, reckon in a rotation. Now, we're not saying this guy is a starter. We're not saying this guy will be brought in to kind of, really push Montez Sweat and Dayoda Yingbo, but could well be someone who could form part of that rotation to spell them with Austin Booker. There's obviously a lot of worry there that Booker will not be able to sort of live up to the next stage, where he will not be able to kind of produce the way that we'd want him to. He is still obviously very young in his NFL career as well. So you look, at the end of the day, you've got to say that in terms of Booker, like I said, he is a DE. He will focus, I think, in that position at the end of this year, so next season. He is only 22 years old. Is someone who I think is obviously still finding his way. He is still finding his way. He was only brought on board in 2024 when he was drafted in last year's draft in the 5th round, 144th pick of the 2024 draft. Obviously, was something to prove. To go on and try and prove himself this year. So obviously that's something we need to see him starting to kind of really push Yingbo and Montez Sweat. But certainly Passagno would be someone who could come in, hit the ground running, go straight in there as a player who can play from day one. Like I said, not a starter, but very much a backup piece to this offense. Now, in terms of Passagno's stats, where he's up to with his stats. I just need to quickly bring up his stats. I haven't put his stats up on screen. Let's quickly get rid of this. We don't want to see that anymore. But Passagno is a player, like I said, who I think could make a difference. Could genuinely come in and form a part of a very useful rotation. My apologies for not having this ready. Here we go. There we are. There he is there. So as you can see, he is a veteran. He's had a number of experience. He started with 2017 with the Chiefs. 4 years with the Chiefs, now 4 years in New Orleans. He has had recent years, like you can see from his time in New Orleans, affected by injury. Played only 3 games last year, 1 total tackle, 1 solo tackle, and nothing else. 2023, 17 games played, 19 total tackles, 12 solo, 7 assisted, 3.5 sacks. Back in 2021 under DA, he certainly had that, a decent season, only playing 8 games, however, but still 4 sacks in those 8 games. Career-wise, he's played 104 games, 140 total tackles, 94 solo, 46 assisted, 16.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 9 passes defensed. Back in his original days, back in Kansas City, he was certainly a more reliable starter than he has been in recent seasons, playing 16 games for KC in 2017, 13 in 2018, 16 in 2019, and 16 in the COVID year 2020, recording a sack high of 4 sacks in 2019. His 2 seasons, obviously, in New Orleans, where he's played regularly, 22 and 23. In 2022, he had 15 games played, 28 total tackles, 15 solo tackles, 13 assisted, 2 sacks, and 5 stuffs. I think, it's a guy, like I said, who could come in and I think be a relatively cheap option. Someone who could, I believe, form part of a decent rotation for this team. And I think that's what we're kind of looking at now. I don't think the Bears are going to be shopping the kind of Trey Hendrickson market, I don't think they're going to be shopping that kind of higher level starter, day one plug and play starter. I think, they're going to place their faith in Diarra Yingbo. They're going to place their faith in Montez Sweat, and obviously hope that those two can carry the fight. You've got to remember as well, we have Grady Jarrett who can play on the inside. Hopefully a big year coming up from Javon Dexter as well. Andrew Billings, there's some quality players there. And adding this guy into the rotation could well be an option that the Bears look at. And the fact, like I said, that he's played for Dennis Allen, he's a type of player Dennis Allen likes. Dennis Allen knows him. He's done well under Dennis Allen. This could be someone that the Bears look at. Maybe this is something that Dennis Allen is advising Ryan Poles of right now. Guys, let me know your thoughts on Tanoa Kpassagnon, and whether you think he could form a useful part of the rotation. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on our Chicago Bears. I've been Owen James. This has been the Chicago Bears Huddle. It's been a pleasure speaking to you as always. Guys, let's remember, bear down. Catch you later, Chicago.